All right, boys and girls, in order to do our cherry blossom branch, we are going to use some Black India ink, the most minute, the smallest amount of ink you can imagine, and a brush. So basically the idea of the branch is that you're going to be making the letter Y as much as possible. And in Chinese painting, which is what we're trying to imitate here, it's all about the brush stroke, and you can get very fine lines with the brush and thicker lines. It's all about how you hold and use the brush here. So I'm going to take out the sample here, and I'm going to show you how we do this. Now, most likely you'll have some kind of whiteboard. You can use your background paper. If you ever have too much ink on your brush, okay, if you ever have too much ink, just use your background paper to brush it off, okay? And basically the first thing you want to do is you want to dip your brush into the ink, and a little goes a long way. That's all you need to remember. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to start at the bottom of your painting, and you're going to lean on the painting and just do one curved line. And I ran out of ink, which is fine, but look at how much ink that lasted. Now, when I was doing this line, I'm dragging my hand across the page, and I'm lightly letting go. I dragged my hand across the page, okay? And when you drag it, you have more control, okay? So you want a nice thick line at the bottom, and then I gently lifted up my brush to make a thinner line. Now I'm going to make a few branches coming off. So maybe you want to make like 3 or 4. Again, it's a little bit hard for you to see. By the way, you can see that I'm using my left hand here to hold the paper still. Now that tip of the branch is a little bit thick, so I'm going to go back into the ink here, go back there, lean into it, and now I'm using the tip of the brush to kind of make it a little bit skinnier at the tip. And now I'm going to do the same thing on the other side, but maybe not exactly there. And there you have your letter Y. So now I'm going to go on to the main branch here and do another one, an offshoot over here. And again, it's a little too skinny here. Branches are thicker at the beginning and thinner at the tip. So if you make it too thick or too thin and you don't like what you're doing, like I say, the best part about this project is that you can't mess it up, because we keep on layering it with other paint styles and paint types. We're going to be using tempera paint next week. So you don't want to cover up your moon too much, but you want to now do some offshoot branches from your secondary branches. And again, I'm leaning my hand on the paper when I can to get those secondary branches. You see the letter Y's here? All we're doing is making letter Y, or letter V's. Letter V's and letter Y's. And I think just to balance it out, I'm just going to have maybe one more branch over here, lift it up, and then you have a nice clean branch. So maybe I'll add one more down here just to, okay. And probably because I like to have some symmetry. You see, I keep on dipping my brush into the ink, and you need very little. So now we're going to do these little branches coming off the secondary branches. This is really important that you focus on one area at a time, okay? And let me just switch this around a little bit. It also dries very quickly. So when we're doing our secondary branches, also you want to always keep the ink close to where you're painting, okay? You don't want it to be like, if I'm painting over here, I don't want the ink over here, and I gotta go back and forth and it could drip. You always want to keep the ink close to where you're painting. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold my paper still, I dipped my brush into the ink, very little. If it's too drippy, again, just go on the background paper and brush it off. You can even experiment with some brush strokes beforehand. It might be a good idea if you want to experiment with a few lines and see how you can make some thin lines and some thick lines. Is probably the best way to start. Use the tip of the brush to get those skinny lines. So I'm leaning my pinky on the page, and now I keep making the letter V and the letter Y. Letter V is in Y, and look at how I barely need to go back to the ink, because a little goes a long way. And this is also the ink is also used for calligraphy thousands of years ago. So even if your brush is thick, if you use the tip of the brush, you will get nice thin lines. And if it's hard for you to get the thin lines, once you start adding the cherry blossom flowers next time, you'll be able to cover up a mistake. That's, again, the best part of this project. So now I'm going to move the ink a little bit closer. I'm using my hand to hold it still. And I'm using the tip of the brush to get those nice thin lines. And now, because I'm going to do actually the top of the, you don't want to cover up your moon too much. You want to have it in the background, because we're going to put flowers on top of these little branches. We're not going to be putting them on top of all the branches. So now I'm going to rotate my painting around so it's easier for me to get to the other branches. And take your time, use the tip of the brush, lean into your painting on your pinky so you keep your hand steady. And just keep on making the letter V's or the letter Y's. That's all you're doing. And you can see I barely used any ink. And again, might be a good idea to practice the brush stroke on your background paper first to get some thin lines and thick lines. And there we have our branches.